Hey guys, hope you're doing well. My name is Emma and I'm going to take you through all of my knitting updates for the last month. I am actually filming this one just a smidge early because I'm going out for dinner tonight, so I have to put my face on. I thought I might as well just film my updates anyways. I haven't finished doing my hair, so it's looking a little bit fluffy, but whatevs. I was hoping that I would have a finished piece for this month, but to be honest, even in the next couple of days, I don't think I'm going to finish it. I think it's going to be a next weekend kind of task. So we're all whips today, so let's get into it. Right, I'm going to talk about the whip that I'm like closest to finishing first. So this is my weekend glow sweater, which is patterned by Julia Prio. Here is my version of her. So you can see we're so close to being done. But quickly about this pattern, it calls for DK or worsted weight yarn. It says Drops Lima is the recommended yarn on the sample. So I would say that's DK, but anyways, it's knit on 4mm for the body, trims with 3.5mm needles. Really simple top down raglan style knit, and you've got this all over. It's a wide like 5x1 broken rib pattern on this particular piece. Simple as you just cast on for your little neckline here and a few rounds of ribbing. In the actual pattern, it then instructs you to do like an increase round, and then you establish your wide 5x1 rib. You knit down on your yoke doing some increases. The increases on this one do start like quite rapid, then they go every other round, and then they go rapid once you get down towards the underarm area. Before you separate your body and sleeves, she does get you to knit a flat section of fabric just across the back, and that's to kind of lift that back up, and that's the shaping for this particular piece. Otherwise, you just continue to once you separate, you knit your body section down until you're happy with the length, finish off with the ribbing, and you do the same for your sleeves. You just knit down, no decreases or anything until you're happy with the length, and then finish off with some ribbing and cast off. So for my piece, I'm using this Bendigo Willow Whisper 8 ply, so it's their superwash merino yarn, and mine is in the colour 2511 Coal, also known as black. So for this one, I did actually start my yoke initially with 4mm needles as called for in the pattern. Decided it was coming out a little bit too small for my liking, so I did size up to a 4.5. And I'm making mine to the stitch count for a medium. So I've done quite a lot of mods on mine. So first of all, for the neckline, I ended up casting on a few additional stitches to get a slightly, ever so slightly wider neckline, because I thought the one in the pattern when I initially cast it on, it just looked so tiny. So I did slightly widen my neckline. I did a tubular cast on for mine just to give it a nice rounded edge. I then moved in and established my yoke section. Now I opted to remove the suggested kind of shaping where you knit a flat bit in the back and substitute that for German short rows. So I did have to do a little bit of thinking and math for my piece to insert the German short rows. I did end up starting in the sleeve section and bringing them down into the front piece. So I did have to have like an unbalanced placement of my raglans on the front versus the back. I think I went into more detail on that last time. So I did that. I also didn't do the kind of increases on the raglans as suggested in the pattern. I just did mine pretty stock standard, just every other round I did an increase, and that's because I really needed the yoke depth on mine. So I opted to do that instead, and that's worked out really well for me. What else did I do? Tubular bind off on my cuff, so it just looks all nice and neat and matches my kind of cast on edge there. And did I do anything else? Oh, the only other thing I did is before my ribbing and the 1x1 ribbing and then the wider rib, I did do one round in the ribbing size there, so smaller needles, just a round of knits to kind of give that kind of crisper finish to your ribbing. I did the same on the sleeves. I don't know if you're really going to be able to tell, but yeah, I did that. That was really the only other change. I've actually got makeup on this, I just realized. Got makeup on all of my things at the moment. Anyways, where I'm up to on mine, I have, as you can see, got 2 full sleeves on. One side's been blocked, one side hasn't been blocked. I think I was like up here when I like blocked my piece. So once I finished one sleeve, I then used the remainder of that ball on the body section, and then I started the second sleeve fresh with like a new ball. And that was because I used almost half a ball of yarn per sleeve. I think it was like 90 grams is what it worked out to be. So I would have had like just a small like leftover portion if I had used the same ball for both sleeves. So just from a yarn management perspective, I did one sleeve, used up the rest on the body, started fresh on the sleeve, so I don't have any like weird short bits of yarn. Not that it really matters, but that's what I did. So that's what I've done, and now I've just working in this body section. I'm basically just going to do a few more rows. I've got a stitch mark here, so yeah, where that white marker is where I was up to in the last ball. So I've just joined in a few more rounds. I think I will do about 5 centimeters, and then I think I'll block this piece again just so I can check that body length before moving on to the ribbing. And that's all I've got to do. I've just got to do the ribbing and bind off, and then this piece is done. So you can see I'm so close, so close. I've just got a few more centimeters to knit on this, and then she's done. But since you last saw her, I've spent another 28 hours on that particular piece. So total time on that has been 82 hours so far. All right, next up, I haven't made much progress on this one at all. So this is going to be my zipper sweater light. So this is a Pattern by Petite Knit, the DK weight version of the zipper sweater. God, I'm getting a bit tongue-tied with my words there. It's meant to be knit on 4mm needles, size down for all the ribbings. It's a very basic, again, top-down raglan style knit and all over stockinette. For this one, let me show you mine, where we're up to. Here she is. So when you're starting this particular piece, you start by doing this ribbing. So you use Judy's Magic Cast On. You knit a massive piece of 1x1 rib, fold and seam it together. You then establish your yoke section. You start with some German short rows. This particular piece also had staggered short rows, like where you start on the sleeve. So this is actually, I used the kind of instructions from this as a guide for my weekend glow sweater when I was doing the German short rows in that one. So, and it all worked out. Like I impressed myself that worked out. I'm being honest, like first time as well, like it's amazing. Anyways, back to this guy. Once you've done your short row shaping, you continue working your yoke down, working your raglan lines. You are knitting this yoke section flat because of the gap for the zipper. Once you reach the right depth for your zipper, you then join the piece in the round. If you need more yoke depth, you keep knitting down. And then you'll separate body and sleeves. Once you've done that, you just knit the body down in stockinette until you're happy with the length. Finish with 1x1 rib, bind off. Pick up for your sleeves, and you just knit these all the way down again with all in stockinette until you're happy with the length. Finish with 1x1 ribbing. The ribbing on the sleeve is a little bit longer than the rest of the ribbing from memory, and you do some decreases down the sleeve. There you can see all my pins. That's for my decreases down. Lastly, you knit, you've got some stitches on hold from your collar. You knit a little bit of a facing so that the inside, when you install the zipper, you've got like a knitted section to cover the zipper material. And then you just like sew your zipper in between the two pieces of fabric, and then you would be done on this particular piece. So for my piece, I am using this Timu yarn. So it's meant to be 100% cashmere. I'm holding it double with the supporting cotton that it comes with. That is in the color number 37 coffee. I did size up on my needles, so I'm using 4.5s. Everything else I also sized up by 0.5mm for my needles. And I'm knitting this one to an extra large, which to be honest, now I'm thinking maybe it's a little bit too big. Just for a reminder, if you haven't watched past episodes, I did make one of these exactly the same yarn, everything, as a gift knit. And that one ended up being like all sorts of different sizes, but the body section was more of a size large. And I was like looking at some of the photos of that one, and I was like, actually, I kind of really like the look of that one. And I feel like mine's maybe coming out too big, but I really need to put the zipper in to like get a true idea of the size for this one. But in terms of mods for this, I only sized up in this collar section. So again, on that gift knit, I found that the collar was like very, very fitted. So for this one, I did size up to the largest size for the collar stitches. It was only like 4 stitches or something more than what the size that I'm making called for, so it wasn't like a significant difference. And to account for the additional stitches at the start, I just did one less set of raglan increases basically to balance out my stitch count as I went down. So that's so far the only modification that I've made to mine. Since you last saw her, I've spent another 13.5 hours on her, so a total of 71.5 hours on this zipper sweater. What I did last time is I ripped back this sleeve because I thought that my decreases were a little bit too rapid, but I'm not sure that was actually the right move, because what I've done now is I ripped it back. I spaced out my decreases a little bit more, so I think before I did them 8 stitches and this time I did them 12 stitches, but I've now blocked this piece and the sleeve's actually sitting quite a lot longer than I thought it was. And so I thought I might actually need more length to my sleeves, so therefore I'd get enough decreases in. Now I'm like, oh, maybe I don't have enough. I haven't counted my stitches and worked out how many decreases I need to do to get down to the right cuff measurement. It might be perfectly fine. Maybe I might end up ripping it back and having to do it again. I don't know. I've also, since last time, knitted the like little facing for my piece, and you can see there's a bunch of pins there just holding it in place. You can also see there's like this white thread hanging out there, because what I've basically done on the inside is just threaded in like a guide that I need to like stitch this down against too, because it's just having a real time trying to get this to seam down. Like this little facing is just curling so much and I'm just having a really hard time with it. So basically what I did is I blocked it and I've left it ever since, because I can't really be bothered with the fiddliness of this facing in the zipper, but I really need to get the zipper installed so that I can get the right length for my sleeve. The fact that I might need to adjust my sleeve again, it's just kind of, this project is just, I don't know, I'm not vibing with it all of a sudden. And she's just sat on the sidelines, I'll be real. So I need to really pick her up. Again, this was one I think I said last month, like hopefully she'll be finished, because I was further along in my zipper sweater than my Week & Glow sweater. But yeah, she's fallen out of favor this month. So I don't know. We'll see how much we get done in the next month. I got to get that zipper in at least. Like that's my main goal, I think, for this one. All right, next up, I've got 2 new cast-ons. This is my first one. It doesn't look like much currently, but this is going to be my summer knit, already getting started on summer. I can't believe it. Which way does it go? It goes this way. Holding it upside down. So this is the start of my Sunshine tee, which is a pattern by Andrea Gorn. So this is a light fingering t-shirt. It's meant to be knit on 3.25 millimeter needles. It also calls for 2.75 and 2.25 for some of the finishing details. This one is a top-down knit with what I believe is like a set-in sleeve. I'm not sure if it is the correct terminology for the sleeve on this one. When you're actually knitting it, if you think like drop shoulder style, that's how this is constructed, apart from the shoulder's not dropped, like it sits on your shoulder. So I don't know if that's considered just a standard sleeve or if that's what we call a set-in sleeve. Someone will have to let me know. But it is an all-over stockinette. So when you start this piece, like I just said, it's like think drop shoulder. So the yoke section's knit flat, and you start with this like a back piece, which is, it's hard to tell right now. It's actually that kind of like trapezoid shape back piece. So you get a bit of an angle on the side here. Now for this one, you actually do German short rows to get that angled piece on the side here. Ones I've done in the past have always been like increases, like make one left or right. But this was German short rows. When I first looked at the pattern, I didn't realize, I did see that there were German short rows, and I just thought it was for like standard shaping and not that it was for creating that trapezoid shape. So it does, to me, feel maybe a little bit high effort doing German short rows instead of standard increases, but I don't want to criticize it too early because it may like impact the fit and it may look a lot nicer having German short rows instead of increases. I don't know. But yeah, that's what you do. So you do some German short rows, and then once you finish all those, you basically just knit flat for a bit, and then you start working some increases to start shaping like the underarm kind of area. Once you've done your back piece, you'll then pick up along the kind of shoulder seam, knit like a shoulder bit, do the same for the other side, connect the two together to create a front piece, and then you'll do exactly the same as you did for a back. So you knit flat for a little while, and then you start doing some increases to kind of shape that underarm area. You join your front and your back together, and then you join in the round. So you then knit your body down until you're happy with the length. For this one, you do finish with a folded stockinette hem, and to do that there is optional decrease round, which is just meant to stop flare, but I guess depending on the fit and your preferences, she does say that that's optional. And then you size down in your needles, you knit a few more rows of stockinette, and then you fold and seam in the hem. Then you would pick up for your shoulders, so you've got to pick up all your stitches around the armhole, and you work some German short rows again on the shoulder to kind of create the shoulder cap area. And then again, same as the body, you just continue to knit and stockinette until you're happy with the length. You finish off with that same folded hem situation. And then lastly, you pick up for your collar, which is also just a stockinette collar. But for this one, it's again another detail that I didn't notice straight away. But you actually pick up from the wrong side, the opposite of what you would normally do. And that's so that your cast on edge then shows on the front and creates like a little chain detail, like a little faux seam type of situation. Or it's not really a faux seam because it's kind of is a seam, but you do that as you're finishing, and that's now on the smallest size needles that's called for in the pattern, and then you would be done. So for my piece, I'm using the recommended yarn, which is so exciting. I love it when I can use the recommended yarn. So this is knitting for olive, what is it? Cotton merino. So this is in the color mole, and this one is 70% cotton and 30% wool. I picked this pattern in this particular color because I saw another YouTuber make this particular piece. I'll be honest, I didn't think a knitted t-shirt would be something that I would ever make, but I saw like the finished piece from this particular person. It was from High Fiber Knits. I'll pop a photo in of her finished piece because that's what I'm aiming for mine. And I just thought it looked really nice and like elevated. The thing with like knitted t-shirts is I feel like a lot of the time they end up looking like half finished jumpers, like you just couldn't be bothered to finish the sleeve and you've just called it a t-shirt. They look a little bit too wintry sometimes. They have like ribbing as the finishing details and stuff like that. So I don't know, I just kind of put knitted t-shirts in the like kind of fugly section. I don't mind like a knitted short sleeve top, but it's like a work style top. I think that looks fine. But when it's like mimicking a casual t-shirt, those are the ones that I'm like, oh, it seems a bit weird to be knitting something that's meant to be so casual like that. I don't know. That's just personal preference. Anyways, something about this particular pattern, just with the like all the folded stockinette hems and stuff like that, it seems like the designers puts a lot of thought into like the construction and the shaping of the piece. And so I was really drawn to it. But anyway, so I wanted to make it in the recommended yarn, and this is my first time using knitting for olive cotton merino too. I have blocked this. In fact, let me tell you a little bit of story about mine. So this is my current one. This is the second another piece that I made. And here's a third one. So I have attempted to make a mini back piece of this particular top, and I will share why. So I didn't gauge swatch because I was like, oh, I've got to make a back piece. Like, it's really not the end of the world if I just have to like rip it back and start again. So my very first back piece, which is this one, this tiny one here, I basically just did the short rows for this one and nothing else. I wasn't sure on my gauge. I blocked it and I was just slightly off gauge. This is on 3.25 millimeters, but I didn't love the look of the fabric. I don't know if it's going to really see. Oh, look, yeah, you can totally see. I just have to stretch it a little bit. You can really like see through this fabric. Like, it looks fine, like if it's flush up against something, but I feel like you're probably going to see whatever garment you're wearing underneath this particular piece. Like, it's a little bit too open for my liking. So I was like, I don't know if I love this. So I did actually do a little gauge swatch on a 3mm needle just to see what the difference in the fabric would look like, because 3 to 3.25, like, it's barely a difference in needle size, but I did prefer the 3mm. So I did another one on 3mm. This one I got all the way up until starting the, like, well, where the pattern calls for you to start the increases, and again I blocked the piece, and then I realized that it was coming out a little bit too small, so I did size up. So I don't think I mentioned what size I ended up making. I want to make mine to the measurements of size D, and this one was to the stitch count for size D. Because I sized down in my needles, I went up, so this was size E. And when I measured my gauge, like across this, like the middle section, I measured my stitch count. I should be getting the right amount of centimeters that the schematic kind of references for the size D that I want to achieve. But when I was lying this flat and just measuring it, it was like 1.5 centimeters too short. So I was like, is it just because like the edges are like a little bit more like scrunched up, and will it stretch out? I don't know. I was really in two minds whether I just kind of kept going with this and risk it being too small, or if I start over again. And well, I did start over again. So I ended up sizing up one more time in the pattern. So I've gone 2 sizes up from the size that I'm intending to make to get to the right measurements. And this piece has come out at the right measurement. I will say I'm very grateful that there is a schematic for this one, because it has made my knitting off gauge much easier. But because I am off gauge, it does mean my row gauge is also off. So I have had to do a little bit of calculation. So I basically knit down up until the point where the pattern tells you to do the increases. I did block it. You can see like this upper section here is blocked. This bit from here down, you can see it's not blocked. There is quite a difference. I don't even know if you're going to be able to see it. There's quite a difference to how the stitches look. Like, this is one of those fabrics that like my stitches look a bit wonky and like weird, but as soon as you block it, ooh, they look so nice and even and neat. I really like it once it's been blocked. But yeah, I basically measured down once I reached that point, and then I like referred to the pattern and I counted how many rows, and then based on the row gauge of the pattern, I was like, oh, the increases are meant to start at X amount of kind of like centimeters down. So I've tried to kind of mimic that on mine. Now I do want to size down for the body section of mine. So I've sized up purposely for the shoulder section because I've got quite broad shoulders. And I think I've said this a few times now that like I'm finding the yokes come to be coming out a little bit too small when I'm knitting to my recommended size. So I really need to knit one size up to get a better fit. But you know, a lot of the yarn that I've brought, I have only brought the right quantity for like size medium, and I really need to be knitting size large. But anyways, we will deal with those ones later. But yeah, so did some measurements. I've just started doing my increases on this particular piece for my underarms. I'm going to be sizing down, so I've had to also adjust like how many increases that I end up doing to reduce down to the body stitch counts. It's taken a little bit of thinking to get it right, but like I say, I appreciate that there's like a schematic and stuff like that, because it's been really useful in me trying to get the right size for this. So far with my gazillion little black back pieces they've made, I've spent about 17 hours on this particular piece so far. And I will say I'm running out of yarn. This back piece, I'm like, probably halfway through this ball. Did you say? I don't know, I haven't weighed it. But I feel like I'm chewing through this yarn really quickly. So by the time I do like the front piece and the sleeves, I'm definitely going to run out of yarn. So I'm not going to get the right length on the t-shirt. It's going to be like ultra cropped because I've only got 4 balls of yarn. So I'm possibly going to have to order some more knitting for olive yarn, and if I have to do that, I've got a couple other projects that are using knitting for olive as well, so I'm possibly just going to like cast on all of those so that I can get majority of them done, at least majority of them done, so I know whether or not I'm actually going to need more yarn for those two, because I have a feeling one's like a ribbed tank, what's it called, square neck cami or something. I've got yarn for that, and then I've got yarn to remake my camisole number, whatever number it was, 4, I think, 4 or 6, I can't remember. But I've got yarn for that too, but just I seem to knit very like tight, so I end up having to like size down on my needles to get a fabric that I like the look of. And this yarn is super duper thin as well, so I feel like it does look better on 3mm than anything else. And I know one of the patterns is like a 3.5mm, so I might end up sizing down on that to make it look better, which means I'll probably use more yarn than I need to use, and anyways, I'm possibly going to run out of yarn for lots of projects. So I guess we're moving on to summer knits as my next few new projects. But before we do more summer knits, I have another cast on. So this is my other new cast on. This was a totally spontaneous cast on. What is this? This is the Cumulus blouse, the O-neck version, which is a pattern by Petite Knit. Now this calls for a total of like an Aran weight yarn, but the original pattern uses 2 strands of mohair held together. To meet that, it's knit on 4.5mm needles. The finishings are done on 4mm needles. Another top-down raglan style and all over stock knit. I'm kind of getting bored with this style, I'm not gonna lie. I did actually intend to do like a cardigan, but like I'll get into that in a second. Anyways, this piece all knit in the round, or actually you start knitting flat for a little bit and then you knit in the round. So it's got a little bit of an interesting neckline situation, which I haven't done before. And again, I don't know if this is called a staggered start neckline. So again, someone let me know if this is what we refer to as staggered start. But basically you cast on and you start doing all your raglan increases, but you knit flat for like a portion. And then you start doing some like increases in the front here to start shaping that neckline. And then you cast on additional stitches and you bring the piece together in the round. And that's how you get this nice like deep neckline that you see here in the front. So there's no short row shaping or anything like that. It's just this back piece here. A lot of this is just knit flat for a bit. So think like raglan cardigan. That's kind of what the start of this one feels like. But then instead of continuing like down to create like a V with your cardigan, you end up connecting the pieces together. So yeah, bit of a different like cast on method there, but once you have joined in the round, it's a basic raglan, I was going to say cardigan, basic raglan knit. So you just continue to knit your yoke down, doing your raglan increases every other round. Once you reach the right depth, you separate body and sleeves, continue to knit the body down until you're happy with the length. You'll then collect your sleeve stitches, knit them down until you're happy with the length, and bind off and finish off. There are some gradual decreases again on the sleeves for this particular one, and all the bind offs are done in an I-cord bind off, and you'd lastly just pick up your stitches along this neckline and do an I-cord finishing there as well. So for my particular piece, I'm using this, what is it, drops brushed alpaca silk. This is 77% alpaca, 23% silk, and I've got it in the color number 32 moss. Now, I initially brought this yarn to make a cardigan, which was, I can't remember the name of that Darjeeling cardigan. Is the one that I was going to make. And that calls for 3 strands of mohair held together. But it's still, I think, an Aran weight for that particular piece. Anyways, I know that some people substitute kid silk with alpaca silk. And so I thought that it would be like quite thin, even though I have also heard people like pre-warned being like, oh, it's thicker than like, you know, kid silk, so just keep in mind it's going to impact your gauge. But seeing how many projects there is where it's been substituted, I was like, oh, I reckon 2 strands of this would be like equivalent of 3 strands of mohair. I ignored the recommendation on this label, which calls it, this is called, I'm pretty sure, an Aran weight. It doesn't tell me. I'm pretty sure this is an Aran weight on its own though. And like, you best believe that it works as an Aran weight. So I knit my like little gauge swatch because I wanted to do a cardigan. So I knit my little gauge swatch and I started with 2 strands of the alpaca silk, and it was so thick and it just looked like felted, matted together. Like it just didn't look nice at all. And so I switched down to like 1 strand, and I was like, I don't know if I love the fabric. I don't know if I love the color. I don't know if this is like the right pattern for me with this yarn. But I did buy enough yarn to hold it double. So even if I do make that Darjeeling cardigan, I'm only going to use half the yarn that I've got on my stash. So I was like, what else can I use this yarn on? And I did think of the Cumulus blouse because I know it's a very popular pattern, and I know that that's like a mohair knit. So I was like, oh, I wonder what gauge that's like, if that's going to work. Anyways, I looked it up, and sure enough, like it's an Aran weight, and this is meant to be Aran weight. So I did my little gauge swatch and everything, and it worked out. So I ended up just like buying that pattern and casting it on like really spontaneously. But yeah, so that's how we got to a Cumulus blouse. I'm making mine in a size medium. It should give me about 15 centimeters of positive ease. I don't plan on making any modifications on this, but if I do, it'll just be like a sizing mod to like maybe get a deeper yoke, because I'm at the point now where I'm actually ready to separate body and sleeves, but it's looking a little bit short. I did block it. You can kind of see a bit of a line here. It actually looks like a little bit of a color difference from blocked versus unblocked, which is really interesting. But I did initially think that my row gauge was going to be off, but when I blocked this piece up here and I remeasured my gauge, I was pretty much spot on, which like never happens. So that's amazing. I am using 4.5, same as the pattern like recommends. But I do just want to block this again and just sense check, try it on, and make sure that the length of this is a good length before I separate body and sleeves, because this yarn is not the most fun to work with. It's very like, it grips on itself and it sticks to itself a lot. Like it's hard to kind of rip it back if you make a mistake. So kind of like, I feel like once you knit with this as a standalone, like that's it. I don't think you're going to get a second use out of this particular yarn. I might be wrong, but that's kind of my experience so far. Just like undoing my little gauge swatch was not that fun. It's also, I find this a little bit hard to work with as well, particularly at the start. I've kind of got used to it now, but like making sure that you're picking up your stitch, like the core of the yarn, and not accidentally just snagging like a loop of the fluffy alpaca bits that are coming off of that core strand. Like you have to be a little bit careful. And I think like I think my back piece, I'm like 1 stitch off. So at some point I've dropped a stitch, or I've accidentally knitted 2 together. Maybe I forgot to do a raglan increase. I'm not sure what's happened there. I can't see any obvious like holes or mistakes in it, so I'm just gonna go with it as is. I don't think it really matters because there's no ribbing or anything, so if I'm 1 stitch off, I'm 1 stitched off. But yeah, that's where I'm up to on this. I spent 14 hours on this piece so far. This color, I don't know about this color. I kind of like it, but I kind of don't like it. It's like stormy AF outside at the moment, and so I've got my lights on, so it's looking a lot more like yellow at the moment. But yeah, I don't know how I feel about this green. I feel like it does kind of look like it did online, but I just didn't really know how the fabric was going to look in person. And now that I've got it in person, I don't know if it's quite the right green for me, but it's kind of growing on me. The more I like work with it, the more it's kind of growing on me. But yeah, that is my Cumulus blouse. And that's actually all of my knits for this month too. I've still made a good amount of progress. Like I've got those 2 new cast-ons. I've had to repeat that sunshine tee like multiple times. Weekend sweater is my most favorite project at the moment, and I think that's still going to be the one that I'm going to focus on, just getting that finished and done and dusted. I'm going to focus on getting that zipper installed at a bare minimum, and then I'm just going to continue to work on probably my new cast-ons because I'm enjoying them more than my zipper sweater at the moment. It is what it is. But yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed this update. I feel like this is like a quick update because I've got like places to be, and so I'm rushing this and not blabbering on too much. So like an achievement. Anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.